The Institute for Government has published a report on the terrible state of the nation, and neither of the main political parties are saying how they'll deal with the problems. The IFG concludes that none of the plans being touted are credible unless they also explain how they will reckon with the problems on their desk from day one. They also point out that hospital performance is arguably the worst in NHS history. Waiting times have been the longest on record. That people are struggling to access general practice. That prisons are at a crisis point. That there's a massive increase in local authorities going bankrupt, forcing cuts to key services. The country is falling apart in front of our eyes. The IFG also concludes that current spending plans are implausible, assuming further cuts to a criminal justice system that's on its knees, minimal change in schools or local government, and only small increases in a health service which has suffered a decade of insufficient funding. There are totally inadequate increases in health spending and schools compared to what is required. Cuts in local government spending and criminal justice. That means cuts to the police, the courts, the prisons, services that are already at breaking point. This was the same conclusion in the last Office for Budget Responsibility, Economic and Fiscal Outlook. The areas where there is increased spending implies a real cut in all other departments' budgets, and no one is explaining how this will be addressed. The chair of the OBR described the government's financial plans as a work of fiction, that the government hasn't even bothered to write down departmental spending plans for future years. Labour isn't addressing this either. Neither of the political parties has a plan to deal with this. It's just going to keep getting worse. Let's be absolutely honest here. There's no way back without radical change. The UK is shifting away from its post-war social model, a system with a strong welfare state and universal public services, towards a system that more closely resembles the US model, characterised by an ever-growing disparity between the wealthy and the poor, a two-tier economy. The upper tier comprising the affluent and the wealthy, with easy access to high-quality healthcare, education and housing, alongside substantial financial security and influence. In stark contrast, the lower tier consists of those struggling with poverty, who face limited and declining access to essential services, precarious employment, and diminished social mobility. This divide creates inequality and perpetuates it, where the rich accumulate more wealth and opportunities, while the poor remain trapped in conditions of economic hardship and social marginalisation. So when the Institute for Government says that none of the plans are credible unless they explain how they'll deal with these problems on day one, from this perspective, you could argue that the Tories' plan is credible for its constituency, the rich. No politician says this, but since the Thatcher Revolution of the 1980s, we've had decades of the UK post-war social model being undermined. There is no crisis for the rich, no cost of living crisis for the rich, no health, education or housing crisis for the rich. The Conservative plan is working. The problem with it is that it's dressed up as a plan that works for everyone. The IFG analysis is based on a well-intentioned, if a little naive, belief that the UK economic and social system is still based on that ideal post-war social system. But it's not. And it's incredible how the rich, who are in a minority, manage to keep a system that keeps them rich in comfort, while a massive majority are poor and struggling. The rich are so powerful, with so much influence, they even have influence over the Labour Party agenda, particularly through their control of the media. They crucified Corbyn. Labour can only get into power with Plan B Conservatives like Tony Blair and Keir Starmer. When the Tories fall apart, the rich need to ensure that the alternative doesn't do anything to undermine this two-tier system, to undermine their privileged position. There is an opportunity for something radically different. In the coming years, as we see that the Starmer Labour Party is not able to prevent the crisis in the state of the nation continuing, the need for new alternatives will hopefully become clearer. And that's my job, to explore those alternatives. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.